And so right now, this week, we're like at a very karmic point because we have Neptune at 29 degrees of Pisces. And I'll just bring up here, we also have Black Moon Lilith at 29 degrees of Virgo. So the two are in this opposition. And I'm calling it feral discernment, because Black Moon Lilith evokes the wildness in us, the part of us that is wild. She was, in the myth before Eve in the garden of Adam and Eve. And, Adam wanted her to lie beneath him, and Lilith wouldn't and was like, no, like, I'm equal, we're equals. And he cast her out of the Garden of Eden and brought Eve in, the more lunar feminine. So to me, Lilith is really that feralness that lives within us all, the wildness. And and Mars is actually on mine right now, and she's near my North Node. So I'm just like feeling her so much. And there is this sense where we are being asked to like really bare our teeth, like to get our she-wolf on in order to move ourselves forward. And yet we're not quite ready to do that yet. And Neptune at 29 degrees of Pisces is like, just forgive everybody, trust everything, surrender, flow. And so there is this opposition within us that's like, but wait, I'm sensing this isn't right, or it's not the right thing for me. And then the other side of us is like, just let it happen, just do it. And so that inner conflict is real this whole week. And because these are at the end degrees of these signs, it's really karmic. It's like these mastery degrees where we're learning the lesson that we learned the whole time these planets have been in these signs, respectively. So for Neptune, he's been in Pisces since 2012, permanently. And we've been learning these lessons about this element of our life. And Pisces is also this week very important because Saturn is stationing retrograde on Saturday. So at the end of the week, on June 29th, Saturn will station retrograde and appear to move backwards in the chart. And we'll go back all the way to about 12 degrees of Pisces. So we're retracing our steps since November. November, Saturn stationed direct and started cruising through the zodiac. And so you might want to go back to November 4th. That could be some indication of your Saturn and Pisces story, always with the outer planets, like a week before, a week after. So really end of October, beginning of November, what was coming up for you in your life? And that may be a storyline that reemerges this week. We'll feel it all week. And Saturn in Pisces is about creating structure where there is no structure to be seen. Pisces is the invisible, the subconscious, past lives, karmic cycles. Saturn is the container, the structure, the boundary, the anchor. And so we can do a lot of magic with Saturn and Pisces, but we also need to get more regulated. And we're actually seeing this with like regulations come in on all spiritual businesses. I just wanted to, book a venue for a workshop that I want to hold at the end of the month. And for the first time, they were like, you need to have insurance. I know that, one of our spiritual metaphysical bookstores here in Kelowna, who we have a very special lady in this group, her mother owns the store, that they've also had to deal with insurance. Like there's a lot of insurance and legalities and contracts that are coming into the spiritual world. Maybe if you're a mystic, this is the first time period where you're starting to really think about getting business cards or bringing your services to the world. It's a great time to bring your spiritual practice to the world. And it's also has its share of struggles with that. There are some people who are like, being like, it's witch trial energy. So it's like, organizations like payment facilities like Stripe and stuff actually are going against some spiritual businesses and saying this is like, it's like fortune telling. So you can't use our service because we don't want to be on the line if something was to happen with it. So there is this both and that's happening right now. The low energy of this Pisces energy, especially Neptune at this high degree, is that we can be really flighty, really escapey. Old escape tactics might be coming back up for review. We might feel lethargic and unmoored. Like, who cares? Who cares if I do this? Who cares? Nobody's listening. There's like a sensation of being so floaty and out in the ocean, not being able to see. I did a reel on our Instagram called The Great Undoing. And that's really what this is the dissolving and dissolution of all that we have worked towards since 2012. We've sort of gone on this journey, and then now it's like, okay, now what? So there is a sense of surrender. You might find too that you're annoyed with the spiritual community itself. I mean, everywhere you turn, especially if you live in the Okanagan, but anywhere you are, there's workshops, there's retreats. I mean, there's more events than you've ever seen. We are in a max spirituality overload here, max healing. We've done the healing work. I mean, we've all had our moments, and sort of like this peak experience moment where we're like, what does it all mean now? And we're not going to get the answer really until Neptune moves into Aries. Like the big shift won't happen. And that's not until July of 2025. So, and that's just going to be a brief peak. And then, Neptune's going to come back to this degree. So there's a couple of years where Neptune's here. So it's an interesting time. And the higher version, though, is that this can be a time of pure magic. This is the energy for mystics to get traction in what they're doing. This is the time where we can, our intuitions are so dialed right now, like we can pull straight from source and spirit. This is the time with Saturn stationing to really think, and you might be really productive with Saturn turning retrograde, because now it's time to get all those boundaries in place, get the forum set up, get the YouTube channel set up, get whatever contracts you need in place. Check into your spiritual routine. Maybe it's time to go back to the basics and be like, I'm just going to meditate for 5 minutes a day. And that will help you to bring this energy like more consistently into your life. And pure surrender is enacted, and surrender can be medicine to finally say, like, I don't want to fight this fight anymore. I don't want to do this thing anymore. I don't want to, continue living this overwhelmed life anymore. I'm choosing differently. I'm going to surrender to what wants to come through. And of course, with this bigger energy, the last time this happened was in 1862. That was the last time Neptune was at 29 Pisces. And Neptune moved into Aries later that year. I think it was like January or February. So 1861, I've been looking at the 1860s, and I was out for a solstice fire at my forest place, and my mentor friend, Don, when I brought up that year, and was telling him some of the interesting things, he was like, yeah, like I have a whole website devoted to it. He's a historian, writer. So he sent me his website and all the things that happened around the Monashees, which is a mountain range close to here, in 1862. It was the time of the gold rush. In the States, it was Civil War, and Abraham Lincoln was elected, and slavery was being abolished. It was very essential in the war against slavery. And, the upper states and the lower states that were at war around moral values and what was right and what was true and what was Christian too. Like there was a high faith element and component that was being brought into that. And Pisces is faith. So there's a lot right now, again, resurging around what is morally right, what is morally true, what is ethically true, what is religiously true, what is true for me. There's a lot of Jesus Christ consciousness that is coming up right now. A lot of unconditional love, unconditional forgiveness, unity, wanting it. But then there's also, as always, the opposing force. That's what Earth is the place of opposites, right? And so then there's also a lot of war, a lot of violence, a lot of, seeing that separation. And so it's interesting how these themes are really deep. And it's not just like we need to sit like and say, oh, that was we're in wild times. It's like we're actually in the ending of a full 160 year cycle since Neptune was in Pisces last. So it is the ending of that. And a couple of years from now, we're going to be in a brand new 100 and, some odd years, 160 year cycle. And in that, I really want you to understand, like, this is a big time. So the other things that were happening in 1861, the schooling system was brought into place. The first public school was introduced in San Francisco. And now, that system's ready to change, right? We've been seeing lots of changes in it, but I think in the next 5 years, we're going to see a lot more. Paper currency was introduced in 1861, 1862, which isn't that interesting because now we're ready to go digital, right? They just are shifting, and we'll see what happens with that. And I know cash is king. But, this is just looking at history and saying, Here's things that are going to be potentially happening. And finally, 5 years after that, 1862, in 1867, there was a pretty important country that came together that many of us live in called Canada. The Dominion of Canada was created at that time, with, in more of the eastern area. And that's the Canada as we know it that was created. And so what will happen when this cycle ends? Who knows? Does that mean Canada changes? Does that mean that we have something new that comes in? Same with the States, Civil War was happening. They were having changes to the actual country itself and the structure of it. So what will happen when Neptune and Saturn leave Pisces and go into Aries? So that's like a really big overall view of the bigger energy that's happening right now, and something to definitely feel into. When we zoom into this week, on Monday, we have an Aquarius moon. So we start the day tomorrow with an Aquarius moon, and it's a waning moon, right? We're now coming off that full moon that happened with the solstice, which, by the way, you guys, that only happens once every like 18.6 years that we get the full moon at such a low declination during the solstice, at such a high declination. It's called a major lunar standstill. So the moon also has solstices and stands still at times. And it will also happen next year because it's when the North Node is in Aries. And so it'll be next summer as well. And then we won't have it again for a very long time. And at the equinox, there's actually a really, beautiful moment where the energy is sort of at a peak moment for change. So 2025 is a peak moment for the luminaries to be shifting routines and rituals as well. And we're seeing tons of solar flares. I mean, it's such an incredible time. There's a sacred site in Scotland where you can actually see the moon walk the land, it said. So the moon rises and it's so low, so out of bounds low, that it just appears over this one mountain range. And over the course of the night, it's said to stand still or just walk, sort of across the mountain range. And so they say that the moon is walking the land. And it just sounds so spiritual and so special that I really want to go and see it. Okay, Monday, Aquarius moon, it's waning, it's getting smaller. So we're starting to decrease in energy somewhat. We might have a little full moon hangover sort of energy going on. Starts the early Monday with a moon Pluto conjunction, and then the moon moves through Aquarius through the rest of the day. This is a little bit of like strangeness in the air, right? When the moon's in Aquarius, we're a little more impersonal. So this may help if you've been feeling a lot of Cancer and Pisces energy. If you've been like flowing with all of that water, this might help. For those of us with air in our charts or those who like air moons, this can be helpful. For those who don't, it might feel like, oh, I've lost the sense of feeling during the time that the moon is in Aquarius. Good time for us to be sort of focused on our community, doing collective things, being inclusive, being innovative. There might be some ideas that are flowing through. Once you get over the solstice full moon piece, it's like, what ideas came out through that time? And on Tuesday, Venus also is in a semi-square to Uranus. And when this happens, there is a little bit of strangeness in the air. There's just a little bit of invention that can come through, innovation, and harmony. Like Venus and our values may be at odds with wanting to be more free. So with the Aquarius moon as well, because it is modernly ruled by Uranus, there is a desire for freedom, to break away from something. So Monday, Tuesday might be like, I just need to be by myself. I need to go do this thing. I need to just take care of myself. On Tuesday afternoon, the moon becomes void of course, meaning it won't make any more aspects. The last aspect that it makes, big major aspect, is to Uranus. And that's about 3:30 p.m. on Tuesday. And then after that, it just sort of is this energy of holding energy until it moves into Pisces and begins to aspect some of the other planets. And so Tuesday night, I'm like, do something funky. Watch a movie that's sort of spontaneous or surprising. Have a funky little dance party on Tuesday night to move the energy. It's not a good time for starting anything. So like there's no work that needs to be done Tuesday night, but it just feels like it's a funky vibe energy. And then Wednesday, Venus goes on to square the nodes. So Venus is in an exact square to the North Node and South Node, the nodes of fate. And this is a crossroads in our relationships. There might be a sense here that our relationships are inhibiting or preventing our growth. You might evaluate your values as far as your relationships go. Do my values match their values? And yeah, I've been like already doing this weekend, but there is just a deep sense of like, it's a checkpoint in the year where social graces might go out the window a bit and you might find yourself at odds in your relationships. It'd be a good time though, because at the same time, Saturn and Mercury are in a trine to one another and they're helping each other to feel into our feelings a bit better and to be a bit more compassionate with our communications. So it is a good time for relational conversations on Wednesday. It's a good time to bring up issues perhaps and say, I want to have an open conversation about that, or I want to have a dialogue about that. It would be a great time for co-listening, conscious listening, right? Where you're more about your feelings rather than like just speaking it, because the moon is also in Pisces during this time. It's compassionate, it's flowing. We might flow over here too. Like we have 3 in water over here, 3 in water over here. There's a lot of emotion. But really it is a good day to sort of write it out, maybe even just to spend time in reflection. Make a list of your top 5 relationships and go, what feeling is present there and what might need to shift either on your end or in a conversation with them to make things feel a little bit more harmonious. Watch for fated events when Venus is square the nodes. Watch for people coming into your life that are sort of related to your, past lives. It could be just a momentary crossing. It could be being parked at the lights and you look over and make eye contact with someone and it's like this jolt of love, and you really, you've loved everybody in the world. I mean, I just sometimes go out into the world and ooze love through my eyes. Now I'm getting all emotional, but it's like when we remember that we are so connected and that we've loved all these people in our lives through different lifetimes. Like, what if you were them in a past life? What if you were your own ancestor? This has come up for me a lot with this Cancer energy. If you incarnated, lots of souls incarnate in the same lineage. So you are your own ancestor. It's so powerful. And we're at a moment where we want to really call those stories back in and feel them, even if we don't know the actual story of who we were in a past life. All this Pisces energy that's building this week is like, remember who you are at a soul level and that others are doing their best, but that there's also karmic contracts with this that do need to be completed at times. We can't continue to have everything all the time, or we don't make space for new. And so you might also have some endings that are happening during that energy.